Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining another session. Just another quick reminder, please make sure to use the Q&A chat if you have any questions. We will be taking all the questions at the end of the presentation. But without further ado, I will hand it over. And please make sure to reach out to the Infotools team, my goodness, after the presentation with any additional questions. All right.
Perfect, and thank you so much, Natalie. Thank you all for joining. My name is John Burden. I am responsible for client development here at Infotools. I've been in the market research space for over 20 years, both on the manufacturing side at Frito and PepsiCo, as well as supplier side at companies such as IRI and Kantar. But I've always had a passion for leveraging technology to drive actionable insights. And kind of a quick, before we get started, about Infotools. We've been doing this since the first web browser was introduced, which was 34 years ago. And we've always been focused on market research and insights data. So being able to deal with all the idiosyncrasies with sample-based research, such as stat testing and complex bases or multiple bases and weights and projections and stack data and multi-level data. So it's kind of baked right into the tool. And Harmoni is our analysis and reporting platform, purpose-built for market research data. But we also support other data sources, such as unstructured data. So if you want to pull in GRPs into your brand study or weather, that's all very, very possible. And brand tracking studies are directly in our wheelhouse. We have dozens of clients with brand tracking studies. And we can support you being a DIY client where you do all the work, or we can fully support all your efforts, or we can meet you in between. And how it tends to work is Harmoni really picks up after your field tool ends and allows you to load data. So upload data from your supplier, whether it's an Excel or an SPSS file preferred, or we can automate that whole process with an API connection to tools such as Qualtrics, Decipher, SurveyMonkey, et cetera. From there, there's a fair amount of automation that gets the project set up. And then you can harmonize the data further by organizing the data tree, updating labels, creating constructions, adding segments, et cetera. The overall goal here is to make it easier for you to find the data in the tree. And then from there, it goes into the analysis section, which is the fun part. Being able to visualize and collaborate to create your own stories with a drag and drop analysis tool, to be able to socialize that data. So sharing links to online stories, creating online interactive dashboards, or just going old school and downloading into Excel or into editable PowerPoint. There's also a module on alerts, which allows simple things like a note going off to Natalie, say, hey, Natalie, your dashboard's been updated. Click here to see the latest. To more sophisticated, your awareness scores are at 25. Click here to see the latest results. And the really nice part about Harmoni is once everything is set up, subsequent additions of data are automated. So there's no further setup after that. And a lot of what we hear from our clients is around time savings. So, being able to save between 30 and 50%. So automation is, setup is fairly automated, but the updates are really where the time savings are. The ability to set up predefined reports like dashboards or brand reports, board reports, et cetera. And then being able to, once the data is updated, these get kicked right back at you. Ad hoc requests in minutes versus days. So the days of going back to your supplier and saying, hey, can we recut this slide by female mountain bikers in Boulder, Colorado, and then waiting 2, 3, 4 days to get the results back. And then last, but the ability to integrate insights into the overall business and getting more value out of every study are definitely key benefits. And for today, I'm really going to focus on 3 areas. One, dashboards, so controlled access to brand data via predefined reports. So, maybe it's your brand health report or, creating board reports or sales materials. Second, is going to be focusing in on the analysis tool. So full access to the entire data set. We'll build tables, we'll visualize them, we'll build stories and dashboards. And then at the very end, I'm going to go into some of our efforts around leveraging large language model and the work we're doing with Chat Harmoni. I'm not going to really spend much time on the loading aspect of it, but if anybody has any interest in that, I can come back to that. So let's take a look. I'm going to swap my camera over here, I hope. Perfect. So we are now in a kind of a traditional brand tracking study. It's a fictitious data, phone X, a made-up name, but get the general idea. You have a kind of a general brand scorecard, and I can drill into the data. So I'm getting kind of a general overview of awareness, my brand funnel, and some other brand imagery information. All these slides are additionally filterable. So if I wanted to go in and cut these by males or females or different age groups, I can. This is indicating that I'm looking at the version in the US, but this study is also multiple projects. It's a laptop brand tracker, and it's also a smartphone brand tracker for today. I'm just going to focus in on smartphones. So this is an interesting view, and we can save views within dashboards to what we call stories. So I just simply add that to stories, and I'm going to come back to that in a moment. Second is I might want to look at overall awareness. I look at overall awareness within a specific market, so I get a view of the different brands. Stat testing is also built right in, so this is saying 100% is significantly higher than the prior period. There's also footnotes that note this as well. And keep adding this to my story, and I'll come back to stories in a bit. Getting into the brand funnel, say I want to look at this, across markets. It's going to give me a view of the global and the sample size, which is 1,600, a US version of the US data, and then the data in France. So that's interesting to me. I'm going to go ahead and add that to my story as well. And then last, I'll get into a little more of the functionality with brand imagery, but being able to look at brand imagery across the different brands, but also being able to look at it by trend statement. So I'm going to click on that trend statement icon. And it's going to show me, it's going to default with brand A, which is typically the client brand. And from here, I can expand upon that and dig a little bit deeper, go into the select menu, and I can look at, the brand B and get a kind of an update of that, can add that to my story. But I can also go into the modify menu and expand my statements. This kind of defaults to 10, which makes it easier to see on the screen. But if I want, I can expand that to all the statements. Just kind of scroll through those and then go ahead and add that to my story. So again, kind of looking at a very high level of KPIs for a brand tracking study, but often what happens is you really have additional questions that you want to dig into the data, and that's absolutely possible. So the dashboards are for predefined reports, and then going back into what we call the analysis tool, and it's often on the home page, an explore button, and this can either be available for everybody or only for certain users, but I'm going to click on the explore button, and that brings us into the project tree. So I have access to absolutely everything in the questionnaire, and it's also the same data set that's feeding the brand tracking study. So say I want to understand, the brands and the consideration set for, say, millennials. I can go in to the brand funnel. I'm going to drag the funnel over into my drop zone. These are all my brands. I'm going to go into demos and grab millennials. I'm going to grab 27 to 42. And then drag that into my drop zone. I'm going to drop it into filters. I mean, if I wanted to rebase or if I needed to add weights, this is where you do that as well. I'm just going to look at a quick filter. And now I'm going to highlight the consideration set because that's what I really want to look at. And you'll notice that the menu pops up. The menu pops up and it's only the functions that are available based on what I just requested. And I just want to do a quick sort, but I have all sorts of functionality, whether it's rebasing or looking at averages or indices or counts, weighted versus unweighted data. It's all available here. And from here, I can also visualize. So I just want to do a quick visualization of this. And I want to go ahead and add that to my story. So I've been talking a bit about creating stories. So from the dashboard, as well as from the analysis tool, I can create stories, and they all reside under the stories tab. Oops, gotta save it with the filters on. So these are the stories we just built together. So I've got the millennials and their preferred brand of purchase. But from here, I can change my order if I wanted to. I can add comments, and the comments section is great because I can, in addition to adding comments, I can also collaborate. So, if I'm going to send this back off to Natalie, I can say, hey, Natalie, is there any way you can look deeper into millennials? And I share it with her. So I copy this link, I drop the link into Teams or into email, and I send it off to Natalie. Natalie clicks on the link, she's brought back in, she can see my notes, she can start to build additional stories and combine them and collaborate on them within my same set of stories. So definitely a great feature. Also the ability to download directly into Excel or into editable PowerPoint, built right into the tool. But for now, what I really want to do is go into a more robust study. It's a study we do for New Zealand tourism, and it's how they manage their overall brand. They consider the country the brand. They've got the main landing page, which also has some dashboard elements in it. So if I click on top visitors, this gives me a good overview of the visitors that are going to New Zealand, where they came from. I can also click in on destination. And this is, again, their look and feel. It's customized to how they want to look at the data. This is kind of the different countries going into New Zealand. And you can also filter by males or females or age groups as kind of real basic exploration. But what I really want to do is go deeper into this study and go to the project tree. So again, same data that's supporting the dashboard. And here I want to just get a good view of who's going into New Zealand and when are they going in. So I'm going to look at the visitor classifications. I'm going to grab, and these are all predefined definitions. So the raw data are just the absolute countries, but we have defined different markets. So I'm going to look at strategic markets, and I want to look at this over time. So I'm going to grab my quarter variable. I think I just did top 10. Let me grab turn off my filter. So I've got a pretty good view of the countries going in and when they're going in. But for me, I'm much more a visualization person. So when I click on visualize, it identifies it as time series data. So it automatically puts it into a relevant chart. I'd also like to see a trend line. So it's going to fit a trend line in there. And you'll notice that during COVID, nobody was going into New Zealand, so there's a time period where there's nothing being collected, and that's how we're dealing with that, noting it in the footer as well. And this is interesting to me, so I'm going to go ahead and add that to my current story, my Green Book story. And from here, we're going to go into some more advanced techniques, some of our client favorites. One is called Discover, and it leverages Bayesian statistics to identify what differentiates different brands or different countries or competitors. So for New Zealand, they want to understand what's going on with key markets. So like, for example, Australia. So if I drag Australia into Discover, it's going to tell me, so Australians who go to New Zealand, what are they most likely to do when they get there? They're most likely to land at Christchurch. They're there for a convention. It's not their first visit, which makes sense given the proximity. They're extremely likely to recommend, and they're typically looks like they're going over there for a business. So that's really interesting. I'm going to go ahead and visualize that. You notice again, it's giving me just a handful of visualization options, and these are bubble charts, which I can also add to my story. I'm going to go back to the table. The nice thing is, in addition to identifying what's going on with Australians going to New Zealand, I can grab the entire 10 markets and replace that. It's going to keep Australia as the target, but it's also going to show me the countries ranked that are most like Australia. So Singapore is next, Canada, et cetera, and what differentiates them. And it's all the way from what most differentiates them. And if I scroll all the way down, it'll show what least differentiates them. So that's interesting. I could go ahead and add that table to my story. Another really a great function within brand tracking is just whether you're getting your fair share of specific attributes. So I'm going to go ahead and drag in the top 10 strategic markets again. And this time I want to look at kind of their behavior and what are they doing when they're going into New Zealand. So say I want to look at the main reason for going to New Zealand. And you know me by now, I'm going to visualize this. I'm going to turn this into a stack. Actually, hold on, let me quickly change this to fair share. So there's two ways of looking at fair share. I can look at the absolute percentage, or I can look at the difference. My preference is the difference because it visualizes a little bit better. So when I go into visualize, I turn this into a stacked, I can see that New Zealand is getting less than their fair share of Australians coming into the country that are there for a holiday and converse, if you look at China, there are more Chinese coming into New Zealand on holiday. So it might help your comms to, maybe creating advertising campaigns to better advertise to Australians to come in, on holiday versus business, for example. So for me, that's interesting. I'm going to add that to my story as well. Another great function is just being able to search. We all know we have these really long, crazy 20, 30-minute questionnaires, and the search functionality within Harmoni is great. So if I want to further explore like expenditures or what people are spending, I can type in expenditures. I'm going to take the top 10 and type in by, and I want to look at this by top 10 markets. And just by selecting it, it's going to automatically populate the table. The table's a little bit busy. Perhaps I want to do a heat map. And from here, I can start to see some trends with, something going on in Germany. And for me, I really just want to visualize what's going on in these top tier spending levels. I'm just going to go straight into visualize. So spin this around to a stacked horizontal. And even from here, there's a couple ways of sorting, but if I sort on the highest spend level and then just do a sort, it'll clearly show me that Germans really are the number one spender going into New Zealand. There's a lot more going on here. They actually spend a lot more time there, so that's one of the reasons they spend more money. But from here you can continue to sort of explore what's going on in the data. Another great function, a lot of times when you're in the data and you don't want to go back to your vendor and you need a specific cut, you can go in and create your own variables. So if I want to create a origin variable, I just click on origin. I say I want a new axis. I'm going to call this region because I want to create North America. And just call it NA. And from here, it's going to open up the editor. And this is where I can create, simple, collections of markets, or I can use Boolean logic to really build nice constructions. But for this, I just really want to look at all the markets. So I'm going to grab Canada. Drag that in, and then just go down and quickly get US, keep it simple. And then I'm going to save the expression. So this will give me that construction immediately. I didn't process the data. It takes 15, 20 seconds, but this gives me the ability to immediately look at a different view. And the drill. Someone comes into your office and they ask you for a quick update on what's going on, but you need to do a different cut of the data. So the last thing you want to have to do is go back to the supplier and get that cut run. So just a huge time saver. So back to stories. I know we talked about stories within the brand component, but the stories we created here, this is how we also create dashboards, and dashboards are comprised of multiple stories. So if I want to create a dashboard, I simply go to the dashboard page. Got a Green Book dashboard back page already set up, but I click on the edit button, and this is where I can add multiple charts. The very nice thing about dashboards and Harmoni is you can create dashboards from multiple data sources. So if I had Net Promoter Score from my CSAT study and I have my brand health metrics from the brand study, I can combine them into one location. So for here, I can go up and grab, study I did once before, which is showing a story I built once before, which is showing the percentage of folks going into the country. Say I wanted to look at some of the trend data we just created. Can drag that in. And a lot of this, you're just organizing it very similar to how you would do it in PowerPoint. I mean, I added the image before the call, but can absolutely see the functionality and how similar it is. And even being able to add comments, being able to add comments to a slide. Oops. It's not letting me do it. Add bullets and just kind of figure out key findings. Very handy when someone calls up and says, hey, can you give me a summary of what's going on within New Zealand? So you could go into the brand study and pull brand info. You can go into, say, a Net Promoter NPS study and pull in NPS information and combine it all in one place. To get them back to the dashboard, you copy the link and the URL, drop it into the email, they click on it, they're brought right back into it. So this is the basis of building the dashboard, similar to what I showed to you earlier. Another dashboard and an example of multiple stories or multiple projects within one story is work we do with New Zealand Transport. So there's a study done, but on COVID, there's a journey monitor, there's a state highway, there's a biking and walking study. And these are all done by multiple vendors, but they're all in one location. So when the person, the head of this group wants to pull stories from different projects, they can do that directly in Harmoni. And the nice thing is when each of these are updated, each of those individual stories are also updated. So last, I want to share some work we're doing with what we're calling Chat Harmony. And if the technology gods are in alignment, I'm going to have Johan do a quick demo. We're picking up with a table that's in a story, and he's going to walk us through how we're approaching large language models and leveraging them to find key findings in a project.
Usually this is where the analysts will assign some of their own commentary. In this case, boring old human commentary. However, using our new AI insight option and the power of large language models, we're able to generate commentary on the fly based on this data set that encompasses the perspective of a researcher. So the prompts here are really driven around creating a helpful analysis commentary. And then further to that, we can start a dialogue. In this case, what are the three takeaways from this commentary? Thus allowing for a short summary of the three takeaways from this particular analysis on the screen. We always have the option here to copy and paste and submit this commentary to be part of this view. So when it is exported from the platform or other members of your audience view it, they can see that. And as you can see, as we move here through the other views, this AI-generated commentary can be applied, shown, and ultimately exported from any one of those views that has been created. Because of the AI insights option, we do have the ability to have an ongoing conversation with data as well. So rather than generating a standard one-off commentary, we can now start to talk about this data from the perspective of things that are available on the screen, and potentially those that aren't. So in this case, doing a netting on the fly, asking about sample people under 55, while not appearing directly in the data, the language model has been able to do the calculations to work that out, effectively creating a net and letting us know that 42 people of the sample are under 55 years of age. Of those people in China and New Zealand, how many are under 35 in age, but also right-handed. So here again, looking at handedness, the second part of the starter table, age, top part, and also country, which is the banners across. The language model is able to analyze this data, do its various calculations, and ultimately draw a conclusion here, which can be really helpful to the researcher, effectively creating some netting on the fly, and also looking at the data to come up with our final answer here. 8 people who are under 35 in age are also right-handed, China, New Zealand, and and then finally, taking the highest age and the lowest age group, which countries make up which countries are represented the most by these groups. So again, asking further information about the data, and also assuming that we're doing an analysis across the data set that is available here. Now, as we can see here, as the language model goes through its calculations, it does show the evidence of those, so that we can do a validity and sanity check on that information. Thank you so much for your time. We're excited to get this in the hands of all.
Yeah, and thanks to Johan for pulling that together. It's still in a test environment, but very exciting, especially when you start to think about the ability to use it across multiple studies and say, hey, what are the significant changes from the last wave of this study? So it's very exciting. There's a lot to digest. I grab the slide here. But definitely thank you. I appreciate your time. I believe we have a little bit of time for questions. I mean, there's a lot to digest, but I really feel like Harmoni is a perfect application for automating your core brand projects, giving you the ability to further explore and really helping future-proof your studies. Very, very common to migrate your studies from one vendor to another, and having it in a common platform makes that whole process much, much easier.
Awesome. Yeah, so it looks like we do have some time for questions. I just wanted to start out with this first one, and you might have touched on this already, but can you create variables with Harmoni?
Yeah, I did touch on it. Yeah, so within the editor, you can create any variables based on Boolean logic. So definitely.
Okay, awesome. And could you touch also a little bit on how to build stories from different databases or projects?
Yeah, so I showed it a little bit, but it could definitely show the person more. But you effectively build stories in one project, and then you can go into a separate project and add story views into that saved project. So you're combining them from multiple sources. It's very much like how you would do it in PowerPoint. So you have one PowerPoint slide set that you're building, and you're grabbing them from different sources. It's a very similar process.
And can you export the entire story or just one slide at a time?
Yeah, so you can. I was going to show you, but we ran out of time. But you can absolutely export the entire slide set into PowerPoint, and it is editable PowerPoint.
Awesome. And for people who want a little bit more of a branded feel, can graphs be in their own color scheme?
Yeah, definitely. So if you're Coca-Cola and you have a specific red color, we can absolutely always get the brands in the right color. And the general belief is, to make this a place that's very familiar and you're comfortable, so you get there and it's your look and feel. So when Coke logs in, they see, their look and feel, or whoever it might be.
Perfect. And is export to PowerPoint native or in an image?
Yeah, it's native. It's not an image. So when you click on it, it'll have the data behind the image, behind the graph. Sorry.
Cool. One of the buzzwords of today, LLM. Which LLM is Harmoni using?
Yeah, right now it's ChatGPT. I think we're going to have 4.5 and 5 coming soon. We're also playing with Claude and Gemini. Seems like every day there's a new one out there. So it's definitely exciting, especially kind of automating those mundane tasks that, Natalie, you're not old enough, but in the olden days, we used to put, commentary on the top of slides, like, 50% of the population are female. Just such a nauseating task, especially with, 200 or 300 page decks.
Yeah, I can imagine. My goodness. Just a few more questions. How do you combine data from different projects?
Yes, it kind of depends on what the needs are, but if there's a common variable, you can create, if time's a common variable, you can pull both projects into one project and align it on time. That one example I shared with New Zealand Transport, those are all separate projects, but they're in one website, so that you can combine the stories in the back end. Kind of depends on what the objectives are. But like if you're doing a brand health tracker and you want to overlay GRPs, you literally load the brand data, you load the GRPs, which is typically an Excel file, and you align it on time. So when you run awareness, you can also align it with GRPs.
Cool. And then one final question. Do you have stat testing across multiple variables?
Yes, I believe I showed just the one dimension, but we use chi-squared for discrete variables, and we use t-test for continuous variables. So t-test.
Well, thank you so much, Sean. Really appreciate you being here today. As I mentioned, for anybody in the audience, please reach out with any additional questions that you might have for the Infotools team. Obviously, John's email is right there, so make sure to shoot him an email. Thanks again, everybody.
Yeah, thanks, Natalie. Thanks, everybody.